Hello and welcome back to Science and Sports. Today I'm joined by Dr. Richard Blagrove. Richard is a highly respected sports scientist and educator. He holds a Bachelor of Science, Master of Science, and a PhD, and is a senior lecturer in physiology at Loughborough University. In this conversation, we'll explore Richard's journey into sports science, his current work in research and teaching, and dive into some of the most important and sometimes underrated areas of sports science education. Have fun in the episode and don't forget to like and follow the show. This podcast is powered by Team Builder Practice. Team Builder Practice is an all in one tool helping coaches plan smarter, not harder. Whether you're running drills, organizing full sessions, or collaborating with your staff, Team Builder Practice gives you the power to create, customize, and track your practices like never before. Say goodbye to whiteboards and spreadsheets, and hello to real-time planning, built-in drill libraries, and session logging. Just for our listeners, Team Builder Practice is giving you a 30-day free trial with the code EURO. It's a great way to try out the newest way to plan and run your practices. Head to teambuilder.com/practice to start your trial today. Okay, welcome back to Science and Sports, my podcast all around the world of sports and the science behind it. My today's guest, Dr. Richard Blagrove. Hi, Richard.
Hi there, Simon. Thanks for the invitation to come on your podcast.
It's my pleasure to talk to you. Can you give me a little introduction about yourself and talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm based at Loughborough University, which is in the Midlands in the UK. I'm a senior lecturer in physiology at the university, as well as I have a title called Postgraduate Director of Studies, which basically means that I have responsibility for all of the master's programs that we have within the school. Which is 14 now and 600 students. So it is quite a demanding role, that one, but I'm quite enjoying it. And yeah, I've been at Loughborough for 6 years now, since 2019. Prior to that, I was working at a university in Birmingham, which is also in the Midlands in the UK, for a couple of years as a senior lecturer in sport and exercise science. And prior to that, I was at St Mary's University, which is an institution in London, where I worked as a lecturer and a senior lecturer in strength and conditioning for, I think I was at St Mary's for about eight or so years.
Mhm.
And as we were discussing before the podcast started, like alongside all of my kind of research and academic responsibilities, I've always kind of seen myself as a strength and conditioning coach at heart, and that's kind of where my career originally started. So yeah, over the last 10 to 15 years, I've worked a lot with athletes, particularly middle and long distance runners. And before working at universities, I was a full-time strength and conditioning coach, working in a university setting, but across a lot of different sports.
Mhm.
And so I guess that's where my career first started as a practitioner, as a strength and conditioning coach straight out of university. And yeah, I don't know if you want to go any further back than that without boring people too much.
I'm interested in the switch from you becoming a lecturer after being
Yeah.
a strength and conditioning coach. What was the reason behind changing to be like a public speaker or like a speaker in
Yeah.
front of a big class of students?
Yeah, I mean, you might be quite surprised to hear that it's not actually an uncommon switch, certainly within the UK.
Mhm.
That when people have been working for a while as a strength and conditioning coach, I guess they sort of feel like they want to give something back, and start teaching and training students to become strength and conditioning coaches. And so there was a little bit of that there for me, that I sort of felt like I had something to offer to young coaches that wanted to make the transition into full-time professionals. Um, but yeah, it was like, yeah, going all the way back to when I first started working or applying for jobs at universities. I'd done a little bit of teaching in colleges. And so for a few years, I'd done part-time teaching at kind of 16 to 18-year-old students and
Mhm.
their qualifications. Um, and then, as I said, I was working full time as a strength and conditioning coach for a while. So when a job came up at a university to lecture in strength and conditioning, I was like, well, I've got this teaching experience, and I've been a full time strength and conditioning coach for a while. So I guess for me, it was sort of combining those two things together and teaching at a slightly higher level.
Mhm. You mentioned that you are the I
It was the
forgot the
director of studies for.
yes, exactly. Thank you. For over 14 different master degrees.
Yes.
How did it come about that you are doing this now? And what I'm aiming at my question is like that's a pretty interesting role in a university, and obviously comes along with a lot of responsibilities and a lot of different challenges day by day. What is something that you are really like a key part of your work in a day-to-day job, basically as a senior lecturer, as this in this managing position? What's
Yeah.
something that you are really like interested in, that it's so fascinating for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Um, I mean, one thing I didn't mention when I was just describing my background is that in my roles at St Mary's University and then Birmingham City University and now at Loughborough, um, I've always been a program director or program leader of strength and conditioning related programs. So I've generally always been managing programs that have got between about 50 and 100 students on them, um, which is quite a big responsibility within its own right. Um, but I've been doing that for, yeah, best part of 15 years almost. And then an internal role came up at Loughborough to manage our portfolio of master's programs in this director of studies role. And so for me, it was kind of like a natural stepping stone to go from program leading a master's in strength and conditioning at Loughborough to being a director of all of the master's programs that we have at the university. But yeah, to answer the second part of your question on what are the kind of role, what's the responsibilities, it's a very, very mixed and varied role. So it's quite busy. So there's meetings that I have to chair with all of our program leaders. We have a lot of external collaborations with different institutions around the world that I've got to kind of manage to some extent. Um, as you'd probably expect, there's lots of problems with students that I kind of have to deal with if it doesn't fall within the remit of a program leader.
Mhm.
And I'm also responsible for basic things like recruitment as well. So some of our programs, or most of our programs, luckily recruit very, very well. Um, but there's also programs that over recruit slightly and other programs that under recruit slightly. So it's trying to work with marketing to try and address that a little bit. So yeah, I could probably talk all day about about the 20 different things that I might have to do this week linked to that role, but it gets quite mundane and boring, I think.
But on the same time, you are still lecturing in psychology, right?
Physiology,
Physiology. Sorry.
yes, yeah.
Um, so how does that go hand in hand with the other part of your job? Is it something that you enjoy when you have the time and the space to give lectures, or is it for you? It's like I've done this a lot of times. It's like part of your routine, or is it exciting each and every time you step then back into that room full of
Yeah.
students and talk to them?
Yeah, it's so yeah. I mean, the biggest part of my role at the university is linked to research primarily. So, um, for those that don't know, like Loughborough University is we're quite a research intensive institution. So,
Hmm.
for example, I'm on the supervisory team of 9 different PhD students.
Okay.
So many of the different areas that those PhD students are investigating overlap quite a lot and fall within my kind of area of expertise. But yeah, alongside all of that research and kind of applying for grants and so on, I am doing a fair bit of teaching as well. So most of my teaching is in strength and conditioning, with other bits and pieces in physiology. And I do really enjoy that, like you were kind of alluding to a little bit. I guess I wouldn't be lecturing and in higher education if I didn't
Right.
enjoy
Yeah.
standing up and delivering talks about areas that I'm really passionate about, as well as all of the interaction that you have with students in small groups on a one-to-one basis. So yeah, I teach a mixture of different modules, and some of them are a little bit more pure physiology. Some of them, I guess, would fall within the area of sort of more neuromuscular physiology with a small amount of biomechanics. And some are sort of pure training activities, so the sorts of exercises and training modalities that are the bread and butter, if you know that expression,
Yeah.
like the real basic stuff that the S&C coaches will deliver with their athletes. And,
Yeah.
and I still teach that to our strength and conditioning students.
Okay. You briefly mentioned the research that your university is really behind. You also published probably around 15 publications yourself. Is there something, or is there one specific paper you published or article you published that's like your favorite kind of, where you say, hey, I worked with a team of researchers or a professional sport team that I'm really proud of in that kind of way?
Yes, that's a really great question, and I don't think I've ever been asked that before, actually. I mean, I think the papers that most researchers are most kind of proud of are the ones that, at least from our perception, have had quite a lot of impact
Hmm.
in the coaching or the broader sports science community. And I think for me, I've been involved with, I think, is it three? Yeah, three training intervention studies now, which I've either led myself as the primary investigator, or I've been involved with. And as you're probably aware, like they're quite ambitious undertakings, a
Yeah.
training study, because you obviously need to recruit quite a big group of participants. Um, there's a fairly extensive and rigorous set of baseline tests that you need to put them through. You then put them on a training program, and our interventions have been 10 weeks long. And so you hope that they don't get injured, they don't drop out, they
Yeah.
don't hurt themselves while they're taking part in the intervention. And then at the other end of it, you have to go back through all of the testing to see what changes have happened, and how much that they've improved. And so they're very, very time consuming and difficult studies to pull off and do them well. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, we've done a few of those and published them in some good journals. And so
Hmm.
I think they're probably the ones that I'm most proud of, purely because you know what work's gone into it, and you know what works, like the hundreds and hundreds of hours that staff have invested to get that paper published and then
Hmm.
disseminated to the community.
When you're doing a study or a research with a big group of people, with a big, let's say, a team, or some people that you're conducting the study with, how important is it from your point of view that after the study is done, that you're not like, okay, I did the study, I tick it off, next study, that you
Yeah,
implement those results you found? Obviously, when they're negative, then okay, then you can't really implement them in your routine. But
yeah.
if you find something really interesting that correlates with something that you are working in your team, for example, or in your case with the endurance running, are you then implementing that in your athletes or players or runners programming? Or do you say, I have finished my study, okay, next study? But I think it's important to then really use that information you gathered in that study to apply it into the real world, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's kind of two parts to the answer there. I think a lot of what both strength and conditioning coaches and technical sports coaches are doing, and have often been doing for years and years, um, is kind of the same as what often researchers investigate.
Hmm.
So kind of what I mean by that is, a lot of the time science is almost catching up with coaching to some extent, and so you take just the basic premise of an endurance runner lifting weights and doing resistance training. Like, runners have been doing that since the 1950s.
Mhm.
There's evidence in books and so on. So it's not a new thing, but there wasn't research on it in the 1950s, and even not great research on it through the 90s and sort of early 2000s. And so I think at the moment, certainly in my area, the science kind of catches up a little bit with the coaching and gives some really, really clear reasons and often some underpinning mechanisms around why strength and conditioning activities are working. Having said that, like with the interventions that we've used, I've often kind of looked at the intervention and the training program and sort of wondered, is that dosage going to work? Like, is there enough volume or intensity in there to get an effect? And then when we look at the results are really positive. And so it does kind of fill me with a bit of confidence that, okay, the dosage of training that we used in this particular study has clearly got some efficacy, and
Mhm.
it works in a positive way. And it doesn't mean that another program wouldn't work, or if we'd have done more, it would have worked better.
Yeah.
But at least we kind of know roughly what sort of dosage of strength and conditioning is going to work for different populations. Um, and I think over time, like I would always encourage strength and conditioning coaches not to kind of read or hear about one study and just one study in isolation and implement the findings directly. Like, I would try and read, I don't know, a dozen different similar studies that are
Mhm.
within that same field, or are trying to address a similar sort of question, and then come to a decision based upon a collective understanding of all of
Yeah.
the literature in an area. And that's where things like systematic reviews and narrative review type papers become really useful, because they've almost done the job for a strength and
Yeah.
conditioning coach. But it's never a good idea to kind of completely change your approach, or copy what an individual scientific study has done, and then just try and replicate it
Mhm.
with your own practice.
This podcast is presented by Like Me, your partner for social media and online marketing from Weiden, and Praxis im Salzhaus, your contact for physiotherapy and health in Altenstadt. So key takeaway: don't just read the abstract of one
Yes,
study
exactly,
and change your whole program.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, when we go back to your work at the university, I talked to you beforehand a little bit about the different modules in a scientific course. Um, you've been in the game pretty long, to you could say. Not
because
that
of my age.
no, that's not what I meant, but um, you saw a lot of different angles on different subjects,
Yeah,
to put it this way, and you you've been around different courses and different scientific yeah, arms in this,
yes,
or branches. So what is something you would say is a little bit like overrated and underrated
yeah,
courses,
yeah,
and what do you think is like, that's, you should bring in way more of this branch or from this topic? Like, for example, it's not enough knowledge available or for the students on biomechanics, for example. What's
yeah,
some of your takes that it's could be making some courses better,
yeah,
if
yeah.
you know what if you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and it's a tricky question to answer in many ways, and um, yeah, I don't know how much you know about the sort of higher education and university landscape within the UK, and I'm not 100% sure how similar it is over in Germany, but like generally the universities in the UK essentially operate as businesses, because they don't get a great deal of funding from the state or the kind of UK government. So the vast majority of income in UK universities is from things like postgraduate, like master's level programs, and then in
Mhm.
some of the bigger universities, it will be research grants and income and so on. Um, and so, in that regards, like, I think a lot of universities and sports science departments in the UK will be trying to create programs which are quite distinctive in nature, and they're trying to offer something slightly different or slightly new for students, just to try and appeal and get more student numbers so they can increase their income.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think there's very many like poorly constructed programs within the UK. I think most are quite well thought out and constructed, but they'll have overlaps, but they'll equally have some distinctiveness and differences.
Mm-hmm.
And those differences will often reflect some of the specialisms that either the university has as a whole or the staff that are delivering that program
Yeah.
believe that they have. So, for example, there's the strength and conditioning programs within the UK that have got more of a focus on the youth athlete, because most of the staff that deliver that program have got a background in working with youth and paediatric populations. Similarly, there's programs that are still called a master's or an undergraduate in strength and conditioning, but they'll have a more sort of public health focus. So they'll focus on the use of resistance training and broader strength training activities with members of the public, and sometimes even in clinical groups as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other programs that are a little bit more balanced. Like our program at Loughborough, for example, has got quite a large focus on neuromuscular physiology, and it gets quite a lot into depth around neuromuscular physiology. And we have a very strong coaching science team as well, so we get into quite a bit of depth around sort of philosophies of coaching science and so on. And it perhaps means that we neglect other areas very slightly, because we haven't got the specialisms within the school that can teach those areas. But I think that's kind of okay. And so what I usually advise to students that want to study in the UK and are looking at different programs at universities is to shop around properly and try to ask all of the questions that they're interested in about the subjects that are covered, the types of assessment strategies. The location of the university in the country is
Mm-hmm.
important. Sometimes what sports that the university specialises in a little bit more if the student is also an athlete. So to ask all the questions that are relevant to them, and then they can make a much more informed judgment about the right course and the right institution to study at.
Mm-hmm. One more thing to ask and add for the student part of it. You said to reach out, to look around, to find something that you are really interested in. Would be my question to you: how students can really get the most out of their university experience? Like, what
Yeah.
can they do beyond the lectures to really learn the most and just have the best experience?
Yeah, and it's a really important question for students that are starting university courses. What I always say to our students on an induction week when they're starting is I try to encourage them just to immerse themselves in the whole university experience. So that's not just the academic course and the assessments that they need to work towards, but also the broader kind of extracurricular things. So to get involved with a sport at the university, definitely for a strength and conditioning student to join the gym and try to work in a sort of gym environment as part of their own training and coaching. To perhaps do things with the student union, so volunteer activities and other kind of trips and interesting things that are going on that a student union might put on. And then definitely for most sports science students and strength and conditioning coaches is to try and get involved with some sort of coaching placement and coaching experience, because they can do a broad set of extracurricular activities and finish with a high first in their undergraduate degree. But if they don't have any relevant experience to their name, they're virtually going to be unemployable when it comes to trying to apply for jobs.
Yeah.
So to try and get involved with a variety of different coaching roles and experiences over the course of their studies. And I think if they do all of those things and they're sort of fully invested in the whole university experience and they sort of throw themselves into it, then they'll get the most out of it, but also they'll have a more enjoyable experience and feel like they've, I guess, kind of got value for money as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you just said it in the last or second to last sentence to make the most out of it. And I think if you just, that's interesting how you phrase it, but if you really live the life at the
Yeah,
university, not like partying lifestyle, but I mean like you really try to integrate and try to learn, then the credibility for the student to get some jobs or to be acknowledged by lecturers or professors will go
yeah,
up as well too, right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think all of these different experiences and parts of the broader university experience kind of complement each other as well
Hmm.
to some extent. And I think there's often a lot of support services available to students that they're not fully aware of or they don't take advantage of. So we have an excellent careers service. We have a huge library, which isn't just books and journals, but there's a lot of staff that work in that library that can help and support students with their academic skills.
Hmm.
Um, and we have a coach and volunteer academy that students can get involved with at Loughborough. So yeah, lots and lots of different opportunities and activities that are available for students that we try to encourage them to get involved with. But
Yeah.
as you say, some choose to, and others choose not to.
Yeah. Richard, before I want to wrap up this episode, I have one more little topic I want to talk to you about. Speaking of the library, speaking of books,
Yeah,
you also published a book yourself, and it's called The Strength and Conditioning for Endurance Running.
yeah.
Can you share me a little bit about why you chose to write a book in the first place and why it's specialized on endurance running? Were you a running lover yourself, or how did this all come about?
Yeah, so my main background as an athlete was middle distance running,
Hmm.
going back to my own university days, and yeah, I wasn't by any means a world beater or anything. I operated at a reasonable standard,
Hmm.
kind of national level. But yeah, I used to get a lot of injuries myself as a runner, and so I guess my first kind of experience of strength and conditioning was doing physiotherapy exercises and reading on the early days of the internet the
Hmm.
right types of strengthening exercises that runners should be doing for different types of injuries. And yeah, I guess that kind of sparked my interest a little bit in strength and conditioning. So when I got involved with coaching myself and I was working down in London, I naturally started doing strength and conditioning coaching work with a lot of the runners that were based in and around the university
Hmm.
where I was working. And I was really lucky to work with two or three runners that competed at a very very high level. They were Olympic finalists, and a couple of them won medals at major international championships, and
Hmm.
so they were relatively well known in the kind of athletics community within the UK. And so once your name's kind of associated with them, you get a lot of runners and coaches that approach you for advice, and some of them want you to coach them. And I was getting so many inquiries. I thought, well, I kind of need a resource which I can point um, a lot of these coaches and runners to without necessarily having to do all the coaching myself. And I didn't really believe at the time that there was a high quality strength and conditioning book available that specifically for middle and long distance runners. And so yeah, decided to write one myself. Um, and it kind of started as quite I guess, kind of a relatively small project that I thought I was going to be able to do it quite quickly. Um, and it expanded quite a lot because I guess inevitably when you start writing a book, you realize that you want to go into a bit more depth on some scientific topics. I wanted it to be more of a coaching book, a sort of self-help guide. And so I wanted quite a lot of detail about the technique of the exercises and some of the common errors that athletes will make when they're trying to perform the exercises. And so there's lots of kind of troubleshooting tips in the book around, well, if you look like this, like try to move in this sort of way or think about this sort of strategy of moving. And so it's hopefully been quite helpful for runners, and I think it's kind of served its purpose because it seems to have been quite popular, and I've had a lot of positive feedback over the years on the book, so I'm quite happy with the end product, and and how well received it's been.
Awesome. I will, if that's okay for you, put the link in the description
Yeah,
of
thank you. I really
the
appreciate that.
book, and also about your publications, your studies, your work, so people can find a little bit more about you and about your work at the university. For now, I would say thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
And it's been fantastic to speak to you today, Simon.
Thank you very much. I hope we can stay in touch, talk maybe again in the future.
Absolutely.
Richard, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating or comment, and share it with someone who loves sports science. And for more content, follow me on Instagram at science_in_sports_. See you in the next episode.